Good morning. This is Rick Long. This is Rick Long with Team DME, and this is going to be the easy button for ICD-10 Conversion webinar. If you have questions, please address them to the question dialog box, and we'll try to answer everybody's question as we go through. Before we begin, though, we would like to ask one poll question. And that is this: have you started your ICD-10 conversion process yet? Basically, there's the planning stage, discussion stage, and then the actual implementation is converting some of those ICD-9 codes to ICD-10 codes. And so we're asking, have you already started that process yet of implementing ICD-10 codes? I'll give you a minute to answer that question. And we have 85% of the people have answered yet. I'm going to give you another few seconds there, so go ahead if you would. We're not going to penalize you here, so don't be afraid to answer the question. All right, we've got 90% of the people voting. We've got a lot of people online, so I'm going to give you just a few more seconds. And I'm going to close the poll here. Give me just a second. They have updated our interface, and it's taken me a minute or two here to find where everything is. Now I'm going to share that with everyone. Fantastic. Okay, you can see we have 16% of our customers who have got a plan, they've discussed it, and they've actually started to implement it. 26% of our customers, they have a plan, but they've not started it yet. And 55% of the customers say they have no plan, and they're waiting for that easy button, waiting for the easy way to do it. And of course, that's what we're going to talk about today. And 3% of the people say, "What is ICD-10?" So that's I don't know if you guys are joking with me, but that is ICD-10. Basically, we've been talking about for probably about 3 years. It's basically the new version of our diagnosis codes, and basically instead of where currently we have specifically 5 digits to work with, now we're going to have 8. And basically instead of using the pre-existing codes and just simply adding to those codes, the codes are now completely different. So you need to familiarize yourself. If you are a professional who will be generating the codes, you'll need to buy a book to familiarize yourself with that process. Hold on just a second. You'll need to familiarize yourself with that process and kind of get up to speed on ICD-10. But the original deadline for ICD-10 was last year, October 1st of 2014. They delayed it for a year, and so now it's October 1st of 2015. And the way this works is if your data service is prior to October 1st, you must use an ICD-9 code. If your data service from is after or on October 1st of 2015, you must use a 2010 code. So there will be a period of time where you're sending claims with both ICD-9 and ICD-10 codes based on the data service from. Okay, for example, on October the 2nd, for example, you may still be sending some claims with a date of service in September. Those claims will have to go through with an ICD-9 code. But you'll begin to put in claims, you'll begin to submit claims with an ICD that with a date of service 10-1 or thereafter, and those have to go through with an ICD-10 code. There is no no grace period. It is a cutoff based on your date of service. But again, there will be a period of time where you're sending some September claims and some October claims, and so you will be sending at the same time perhaps some ICD-9 and ICD-10 codes. So that's what we're dealing with. That's ICD-10 in a nutshell. And so now let me kind of show you what we have done for you to make ICD-10 happen. I'm going to hide this poll and show you my screen. Give it just a second to refresh there. Fantastic. Okay, here's the newsletter invitation and the easy button icon. All right, here we go. ICD-10 in the software. All right, what we have decided, what we have wanted to do is basically, as you're putting in new orders, okay, if you happen to have a date of service, or even if you don't have a date of service, let's say, for example, this is the patient Christina Long, and she has a needle-free insulin kit, and her diagnosis is I've chosen maybe a bad example here. Let me just start a new one. This is going to be Christina Long again, and we are going to rent for her a hospital bed. And the reason I'm using hospital beds, I've already got that one in my mind. Okay, and we're going to choose as an ICD-9 code a 428.0. That's congestive heart failure unspecified, and so that's going to be our ICD-9 code. Now, you're familiar with that process, but now what you can do is, in addition to that, you can add, and you can see over here, this is in fact an ICD-9 code, okay? But I want to go ahead, since I know that this order is going to overlap the ICD-10 effective dates. In other words, we're going to have 13 months of rental for this product, so we're going to rent it for July, August, and September, and that will need to go with ICD-9 codes. Then we're going to rent in the 4th month, October, and then November and December, and etc., and those will need to go with the ICD-10 codes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the Add button, and I'm going to add a new code, which I'm familiar with here. Let me find it. Okay. Well, I tell you what, I'm not familiar with it, let's say, and so I want to look it up. And so there are a number of different ICD-9 to ICD-10 translation sites, and basically, I am going to put in the code 428.0, click Go, and what I get is, it indicates 2 codes, but they're really the same code, I-50.9, heart failure unspecified. So our code, congestive heart failure unspecified, maps to the new ICD-10 code, heart failure unspecified. Okay. Now, this is what is referred to as a one-to-one conversion. Okay. In other words, there is one ICD-9 code, a 428.0 here, that maps to one code, I-50.9. Okay. Now, ICD-10s could map to 15 different codes, but that's not the case with this particular code. Okay, so we have one code there, so I'm going to add an I-50.9. Okay, now it pops up and says that diagnosis is not in the customer's chart. Do you want to add it? You can add it to the customer's chart if you want to. I'm not going to do it at this point, so I'm going to say no. So now I have 2 codes associated with this one line item on my order. Okay, I have one ICD-9 code, as you can see here, and I have one ICD-10 code associated with the same line item. Now, these codes have different effective dates. For example, the ICD-9 code 428.0 has an effective date from 1/1/1980, in other words, it's been used a long time, up through 9/30/2015. Okay, that's when it no longer is going to be effective. Okay, the ICD-10 code, I50.9, has an effective date range of 10/1/2015. In other words, that's the first time that we can use the I50.9 or any ICD-10 code is 10/1/2015, but then it goes through the end of the year, and of course we expect that to continue 2015 to 2016 to 2017, etc. All right, so what you see here is we have two codes attached to this line item. One is effective up through 9/30, and the other is effective from 10/1 and beyond. Okay, and that's the way we have changed the software now. Since you can put in two different diagnosis codes, we're going to go ahead and allow you to do that now, and the software is going to be smart enough to basically, when it comes to the claim, either on paper or electronic, it's going to say, okay, if the date of service, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK here so we can look at the date of service, but if my date of service here is prior to 10/1/2015, and this is, then I'm going to send the ICD-9 code, okay, here. If my date of service is 10/1 or thereafter, I'm going to automatically send the ICD-10 code, which is effective. Okay. Now let me be clear about that, because we don't do this automatically, but I guess some customers could change that effective date to open it up where they overlap. What the system does is it's going to send any diagnosis code with the order that is within the effective date range. In other words, this code 428.0, which is a version 9, is effective through 9/30/2015. This code, I50.9, which is a version 10, is effective beginning 10/1/2015. There's no overlap. And so what that means is prior to 10/1, it's going to send the ICD-9 code, and after 10/1, it's going to send the ICD-10 code. But if I were to go into the diagnosis code, and you can do that, okay, and look up that I50 and edit it, and I were to change the effective date, for example, 2014, in that case, then, both codes would be effective for the date of service, and it would send both codes. Okay? I hope that that is not the case for any of the payers that we're dealing with, but that's the way the system works. If it sees for the date of service a diagnosis code that is effective for that date of service, it will send it. Okay? And since we have ICD-9 codes separated from ICD-10s, it will send the ICD-9 for prior to October 1st, and then it will send an ICD-10 thereafter October 1st. Okay, and that's basically, in a nutshell, the way it works. Now, before everybody starts, getting too excited about that, that is based on our version. If you look in your About Team DME, you have to have that 2015 2.01. Okay, and that's the latest version, out there. I'll talk about that just a little bit more, but prior to that, basically, if you put a diagnosis code on an order, we sent it. So if you put in a 9 and a 10, we would send both. Okay, and so this is, this basically means that you need the latest version. What I'm talking about is going to be the latest version. Okay, and we'll talk about that just a little bit more. All right, let me see what else we've got. I've already showed you, but I haven't pointed it out. let me just go ahead and put in our order there again. I should have saved it rather than... Okay, now I've got it saved. The other thing I want to point out is now when you click on the diagnosis ellipse button, it will pop up and you'll see in any of the diagnosis code pop-ups that we've got right on the screen. I think we've always had the effective from and through dates, but now we've got the version number out there. So you can very clearly see when you're choosing a version 9 code and when you're choosing a version 10 code. Okay? And that's true in quotes, in medical orders, in recurs, in claims. It's also true in the coverage criteria. Pretty much anywhere we're showing you the diagnosis codes now, we're showing you the effective dates and especially that version number that's available. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the physician orders. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that. Okay, this particular item requires a physician order. We're going to go to authorization document and pull that up. I'm going to pump it up here so that you can see it clearly. But we've changed the verbiage on all of our physician orders so that we can encourage the physician, as we're putting out new orders, to go ahead and give us the ICD-10 codes. Okay. For example, if we're putting out this hospital bed now, well, again, we know we're going to need the ICD-9 code for 3 months. Well, while the doctor has the chart in front of him or her, while he's working on the patient, while it's fresh on his mind, let's go ahead and get the ICD-10 code because we know we're going to need it, except if the patient passes away or doesn't need it for some reason, prior to 10/1. And so let's go ahead and get the ICD-10 code. And so what we've got here is on the physician order, we've got, just like we have always done, the diagnosis codes, and we print out whatever you put in. So if the physician has already provided it, we're going to go ahead and print that out. But we're going to ask down here, I can't highlight this. Let me see if I've got a magic marker here. Okay. We've got some additional verbiage there. Boy, that makes it where you can't hardly see it. But it says include the corresponding ICD-10 code if the service will continue after 10/1/2015. And so, we want to go ahead and not only get the ICD-9 code at this point, but we want to go ahead and encourage the doctor to go ahead and give us the ICD-10 codes as well. And so, so that will be included in all of your physician orders that we provide as a standard. If you have created some of your own physician orders or form letters, I'd encourage you to think about putting some verbiage in there that will do something similar to that as well. All right, and that's pretty much the ICD-10 process that we've got for you. That we feel like that gives you all the tools that you can use not only today, but to move your claims forward. Okay? It's really simple. You've already, if you've been using the system for a while, you're already familiar with that process. The only difference is we've tweaked it a little bit, whereas previously we would send, if you put a code on a claim, we would send it. Well, now we're being a little bit smart about, okay, instead of giving you an error to say, hey, this diagnosis code you've selected is not within the effective dates of the date of service, now instead of giving you that warning message or error message, we're basically saying, okay, let's be a little smart about this. Let's only send the codes that are effective. And that way people can go ahead and begin to put into their orders today both ICD-9 and ICD-10 codes. And by the way, that same process, okay, and that's another physician order, that same process applies to your customer as well. And that, you can do that today. You can go into your customer and not only have the ICD-9 codes, but you can go ahead and put in the ICD-10 codes that are available as well. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But as you saw, as we're putting in orders and we put in an ICD-10 code, it will pop up and say, would you like to put this in the patient's chart? Now, thinking forward, there will be a time where ICD-9 codes are no longer used by anybody, and we just want to get them out of our system. So, we're going to have tools available to do that too, but, we'll talk about that just a little bit later. All right, I think I've pretty much covered the ICD-10 code and process. I'm going to pause here and maybe take a look at some of the questions that we're getting and see if we can answer that. Okay, this is a great question from Lauren. What if the date of service overlaps? It's a date of service from is 9/6 through 10/5. Okay, and the answer to that is it's all based on your date of service from date. Okay, so a 9/6 to 10/5 would need an ICD-9 code. And again, what we're seeing with customers is if you send the ICD-10 too early, they'll reject your claim. Okay, and I would guess if you send an ICD-9, after 10/1 with a date of service after 10/1, they'll reject that claim as well. So that's a great question. Okay. Okay, does the diagnosis code, this is from Nicole, does the diagnosis code have to be checked off to transmit electronically? That is a great question. What she is referring to here is as we are looking at all of the diagnosis codes. Now what you're seeing here are all the diagnosis codes in the patient's chart or that have been applied to this line item. Okay? And so, the question is, what are we sending electronically or on paper, either one for that matter? All of these codes, or are we only sending the 2 codes that are checked? And I really shouldn't say the 2 codes because, again, we've got a 9 and a 10, so we're only going to be sending one of these codes at a time. But the answer to the question is previously we would send all the codes, thinking that, okay, we're identifying which code is specific to this item, but maybe there are some other codes that are supporting documentation. We're no longer doing that, okay? And that happened probably in maybe the middle of last year or the first part of last year. We're only sending now the codes that you have checked, okay? In other words, it will look at all the line items on this order, and it will accumulate all of those diagnosis codes, and it will send those with the claim. But for each line item, it will identify, the codes that you have checked will be sent electronically, okay, or on paper. So if you have 10 codes on a patient and only 1 code qualifies this patient for this item, just check the 1 code, okay? But if you need to check, what we've seen is some payers now are requiring two or more codes before they'll pay. And so we give you the ability to select 2 codes, for example, and those will go electronically with this particular line item and with each line item. Okay, great question. Let's see. Will we be able to choose 8 codes now instead of 4? The answer to that question is yes. You can actually choose. We can only send 4 codes electronically, okay? But we're allowing you to put in 8 codes because our thinking is you may have 4 codes that are ICD-9 and 4 codes that are ICD-10, and so we're going to go ahead and allow you to check off up to 8 codes with the idea that only 4 ICD-9 and 4 ICD-10s will go along with the order. And so let's see, that's from Nicole. Nicole, that's a great question. Mike is asking why the effective through date on ICD-10s of 12/31/15. The reason we use an effective through date is because in our system we want to have some date. Okay, As we get closer to the end of the year, probably in fourth quarter, well, actually, the codes are updated October the 1st for the next year. And so when we get the update from CMS and from the AMA, they will tell us which of those codes are going to be effective for 2016. And so, right now, we don't know which. We assume that all the codes will be effective through 2016, but the AMA has only said these codes are only effective through 2015, and so that's what we do. We put a effective through date of 12/31/2015. So when we get the update from the AMA and from CMS, and they say, okay, these are the codes that are going to be effective for 2016, then we'll change all of those diagnosis codes to 2016. Okay, great question, Mike. All right. Okay, Christine is asking, what site did you use to look up the translation from ICD-10 to ICD-10, and use a direct link to that site and do we have a direct link to that site from within Team? We don't have a direct link to that site from within Team. What I am using is aapc.com, and actually I provide you, if you go to our website, and I'll just show you this, if you go to teamdma.com/help, this is our website. Right on the front page, we have that big easy button, the ICD-10, the ICD-9 to ICD-10 conversion. Okay, if you click on that, that's going to give you the 5-step process, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But right there inside of that is what I recommend for looking up the ICD-9 to ICD-10 conversion, is that website, and you can even click on that and it will take you directly to it. But there are 20 or 30 websites out there that will do the same thing. They're all based on the GEM that's provided by CMS. GEM stands for General Equivalent Match, and basically that's the code set that CMS has given us to say this ICD-9 code is related to this ICD-10 code. I'll be talking about that a bit more in a minute, because we're going to talk about some, I'm showing you basically how to put in new orders and what you want to do moving forward, and we'll talk about that when we talk about some of the easy button processes that we've got going for you. Okay, great. Okay, Josh is asking, if we have an order with a date of service after 10/1 that the doctor has only provided ICD-9s, and I'm assuming what he means is he has only checked off ICD-9 codes, will the claim submit with no code at all, or will there be an error stating that there is no code on the claim? And the answer is the latter. Okay, if we identify, for example, I'm going to select only the ICD-9 code here and click OK. I think I can see it right away here. No, I clicked the wrong button, and I clicked it again. That's what I wanted, the IntelliCheck. What you will see here is this error message. An item must have at least one diagnosis code that is within the effective dates. In other words, since I chose only the ICD-10 code, and this date of service is 7/2/2015, the system knows that I can't send this claim. I have to have an ICD-9 code, and you didn't give me one. We will have that same process available, after, for a date of service of 10/1. For example, if I put in if this is not 7/2 but 10/2, click on the IntelliCheck, and that error message is no longer there because I do have an ICD-10 code. Okay, but let's go back to 7/2, and then let's go back to our 428.0. So, there's an IntelliCheck for you to make sure that, again, we want to make absolutely sure that you're sending clean claims. And so, if you use a date of service prior to 10/1, you have to have an ICD-9 code, okay? Or you have to have a code that is effective prior to 10/1, which is the ICD-9 codes. If you have a date of service after 10/1, then you have to have an ICD-9 code, See, I'm getting confused. You have to have a diagnosis code that is effective after 10/1, which means the ICD-10 codes. Okay, so we've given you an IntelliCheck to make sure that you have a diagnosis code that will be sent with the with your data service. So prior to 10.1 data service, you have to have an ICD-9 code. After 10.1 data service, you have to have an ICD-10 code. And so, if you don't go ahead, okay, and our webinar has reached the maximum number of attendees. So I apologize if people are not able to get in at this point, but it falls into the snooze you lose category, I guess. All right. In this example, we've chosen an ICD-9 and an ICD-10 code, and so we will be able to let this one roll on without intervention, for 13 months. Okay, but great question. You do have to have a code that is effective for whatever your data service is. All right, Maria is asking, do we have to enter all the ICD-10 codes? Maria, we would never make you do that. First of all, there are something like 72,000 ICD-10 codes in all their variations. And so that would be quite a task. But we've already provided those for you, and in fact, you have them already in your system. What happens is we have given you an automatic filter. I mean, here we are, in the first part of July, and so right now we don't need ICD-10 codes, and so we've provided for you an automatic filter to say, hey, I'm only interested in ICD-9s. I think we provided an automatic filter there. But if you don't see the ICD-10s, for example, you can go, and we've had these for over a year because we expected to start using them October 1st of last year. But you can go into your system and, for example, type I-50, and you should see the I-50 code, and let me open up the window a little bit, identified as version 10. If you don't see it, then the only reason would be that that you have an automatic filter to just show you the 9s, and so click on the clear filter and type I-50 in again, and you should see the ICD-10s. Everybody should see those in their system currently if you were to clear the filter to look at all the codes. So great question, Maria. I appreciate it. All right. Okay, Morty's asking, if we have a date of service of 9/1, but we don't send the claim till 10/1, what happens? Again, everything is based on your date of service. So it doesn't matter when you send the claim. If you send a 9/1 claim in September, it needs an ICD-9. If you wait until October, still needs an ICD-9. If you wait until next year to send the claim, remember with Medicare, I think you have 18 months, 18 months, yeah. I think it's 18 months to send claims for timely filing. If you wait, a year and send the claim, if the date of service is prior to 10/1, it needs an ICD-9 code. So the ICD-9 codes are going to be there, for at least another, year to 18 months in the system. Great. Nicole is asking a question, would the claim have to be split if the date of service spans the transition date? Again, what matters is your date of service from, okay? So you can have a 10/1 or thereafter through date, but what matters is the from date. So no, you do not have to split the claim, in order to send that electronically. All right. All right. All right, Dwight's asking, are there plans to add the ability to check off multiple diagnosis codes at the order level in addition to checking them at the line level? And the answer to that question is, it doesn't matter, okay? Because what happens is, if you put in codes at the line level, we will report them electronically at the order level. And then at the line level, and for example, let's say there are 5 line items, there are 2 codes on each line item, that's going to be 10 codes. Okay, so we're going to provide, well, you can only provide 8, but we provide those 8 with the order, and point to which one we are interested in at the line item level. So that's the way that works. All right. Sean's asking, will the IntelliCheck let you know if you have the correct diagnosis code? The there's really, Sean, no way for us to do that. In other words, the system, will knows that this is an ICD-10 code. It knows when the effective dates are, but it can't. Well, I take that back. We do have not an IntelliCheck. Well, it is in the IntelliCheck area, but it's a warning. You've seen the warning sometimes that you're choosing a code that's not I guess appropriate for the item. I forget exactly what that message is. Mike, can you help me out there? But that's all based on the history that we have seen as people are sending claims, and then we've looked at the ERAs coming back and said, okay, well, Medicare is paying for a EO260RR, and here's the code that was used. And so we can suggest those codes to you, and I think what he's referring to is right here. Basically, we're looking at and saying, okay, we have over 8,000 examples of an EO260RRKXKJ. No, I'm sorry, that's not the diagnosis code that he's talking about. All right, let me table that one. You've stumped the presenter here, so let me table that one and maybe answer that one a bit later. All right. And I've got some customers saying, okay, it's 12 months for timely filing with Medicare. Appreciate that. All right. Teresa, will the Certificate of Medical Necessity forms, the CMNs in the system, be updated? Those have already been updated, and those were changed to accommodate the ICD-10 codes, and they have been updated. They're available in our system. Just download those at your leisure. Let's see. Christine's asking, so we need to add ICD-9 and ICD-10 codes to oxygen CMNs, etc., if it's going to be going from now through October forward, and the answer is absolutely. Okay, any CMN that we put out now, any physician order, any of the occasions where we have to interrupt the doctor and to stop him, I would certainly be asking for the ICD-10 codes at this point. If it's going to be a recurring order, because for example, there is a one-to-one conversion for COPD. For example, you look at 496, click go. Okay, there is only one code for that. So if the doctor gives us 496, which is typical for an oxygen concentrator, then we can easily convert that to an ICD-10 code. But I would certainly prefer, especially if the primary payment that we're going to get is going to fall into the ICD-10 date range, I would certainly prefer for the physician to be giving me that code directly rather than me interpreting it. Okay. All right, fantastic. And Janet's reminding me, and I'll remind everybody, that Medicare is having a monthly webinar regarding ICD-10, until the implementation date. So you might look for that as well. I encourage everybody to get some additional information and training on this, and and Medicare's webinar is should be a great one. Okay. All right. If there are no more questions then about that, I'm going to oops, I want to save that. We might want to come back to that. And okay. Now, what I want to do, we have seen basically how to put in new orders, how the system will work moving forward. Now let's talk about the easy button. Okay, and I call it the easy button just because I think people understand what that concept is. But what we've done is we've tried to think about how we can make this process really easy for our customers. And what we've come up with, and again, if you want to follow along with me, if you want to go to teamdme.com/help, okay, and right on the front page, is down at the lower left-hand corner is that big easy button, okay, and just click on that. You're going to go to our page of, this is kind of our suggestions for you for your ICD-10 conversion process, okay? Now, if you look at these 5 steps and go, oh, this is crazy, this is, way too little, or, I can't believe it's way too much, but, if you look at it and go, you're missing the boat complete, hey, I'm not going to be offended at all. I just wanted to, give our customers a head start on what we think would be a great process, okay? And so we've narrowed it down to 5 steps, all right? The first step is, hey, we need to figure out how much work is there to do, okay? Let's say you've got, I'll just, use a customer as an example. You've got 19,000, patients. You've got 2,000, recurring orders that you need to deal with. If we have to, contact the, physician and, get new codes for every order that they've given us, that's going to be a lot of work, and that's going to be a lot of, a lot of long hours, etc. And so the first step is, let's just figure out what the problem is. Now, I don't really worry too much about the customer's chart, because if a customer has passed away, we're never going to need an ICD-10 for that customer. If a customer has left and gone to another provider, again, not going to need an ICD-10 code for that customer. So really and if I have a customer who comes, to me and needs a new product, then I'm going to need a new authorization document, CMN or physician order, and so I'm going to ask for the ICD-10 code at that point. So new customers I'm not too much worried about. What I'm mostly concerned about is my recurring orders, because those are the orders that just kind of roll from month to month to month, and I don't really have to do anything more to them. But now I am going to have to do something when it rolls from September to October, to go. So first question is, okay, what's the extent of my work? And so what we've got there set up there is step 1, summary by ICD-9 count. Now, in order to do this, and I'm going to just click on that summary by ICD-9 count, is I'm going to highlight, this is a little bit of SQL code, and cut and paste that, and I'm pressing Control-C to copy, okay? And then I'm going to go into Team DME, and inside of Team DME, I'm going to go to System and SQL Editor. Now you'll notice we've moved the SQL Editor outside of technical support. This is where it used to be, but we had a number of people who wanted other employees to use it, but they didn't want to give them administrator access. So we moved it out into the system menu, and there's now a security point for it. So you go to the SQL editor, okay, and then just Control-V to paste, okay. Now you'll notice that put a blank, well, that put a line in my system, and it's just one line, and it's really long, okay, and it even continues out beyond where I can see. The reason we did that is we found that wrapping it around, for some reason, in some browsers, that cut and paste would not work, but it seems to work every time when we do it as just one line. So once you cut and paste your SQL statement, you press F9 to execute, okay, so F9. And so these are all of the recurring orders and the ICD-9s that I have, which do not have a corresponding ICD-10 code, okay? And when I say corresponding, what I mean is there is a line item that has an ICD-9 code that does not have an ICD-10 code. Now, if you go into the system, just like you saw me create the order for Christina a moment ago, and you go ahead and put in an ICD-9 and an ICD-10 and post that, and it creates the recurring order, it's going to ignore that in this count because you have already put in the ICD-10 code. So these are codes that I need to work on. And again, this is my test system, and so I don't have 2,000 claims here, 2,000 recurring orders to deal with, but just to give you an example. And this will be in descending order of importance, i.e. the number of line items that have a ICD-9 diagnosis code. For example, I have 17 orders with the diagnosis code 428.0. Okay, I have 4 orders with the diagnosis code 496. I have 3 orders with 250.11, and I have 1 order with 428 and E922.0 respectively. Okay, now let's just, for example, we've already looked at this, but 428.0, that's my biggest, code by count. Okay, I guess we could have given you the dollars there as well. You might want to focus on the dollars instead. We might update the SQL if people tell us that's important for them, but we just did it based on the count. Okay, and so if I wanted to, I could go into my recurring orders, and I could filter that and say, okay, show me all my recurring line items with a diagnosis code of 428.0. Okay, and there they all are. Okay, now you'll notice that some orders may appear twice, and what that means is we've got multiple line items with that same diagnosis code on it. But if I wanted to go and look at it, for example, there's John Wayne. Okay, patients ask us not to give any information to autograph seekers, etc. I can go into that item and I should be able to see a 428.0. Okay, and there it is. And I can fix that manually if I want to. Okay, and just like we would add, we saw for a 428, that was going to be, I believe, an I50.9, and so we can add that manually if we wanted to. Okay, but we do have a, so that's step one. Step one is just to identify what we need to do. Step two is to delete any unneeded orders, and the way to do that, let's go back to our, there we go, step two, delete any unneeded orders. And I can already tell we're going to go over our time here. I apologize for that, but I hope this is good information. Hope you're enjoying this. I'll try to move it along quickly. Detail by order line. Okay, I'm going to click on that, and the detail by order line is right here. Okay, detail by order line, and so I'm going to cut and paste this SQL statement back into my SQL editor again. Again, it goes in as one line, and then these are all the recurring orders and the line items that create that report. For example, if we cursor over here, we should be able to see, okay, here's your diagnosis code, and here is your procedure code corresponding to it. This is in order number order, okay? And so, here's my one example of 428. Here's another example of 428. What we're looking at here, the question is delete any unneeded orders. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, first of all, an unneeded order would be those orders that are no longer active. For example, here's a good one. Okay, we have 13 allowed billings, but we're in the 14th month currently. Okay, well, I probably just forgot to pick that up, and so probably what I want to do is go in and pick that order up. For Warren Beatty. Okay. The other thing is I might see is pick up any orders that are no longer active. For example, the last date of service on this very first one was 2005. Well, what that probably tells me, and the month and the date are backwards here when it displays, just for example, but it's month. It's day, month, year is what you're looking at. But in the year, we're seeing 2005. Well, if this patient has not, come back to me since 2005, it's really not a recurring order. And so I probably just need to delete that, pick up that, equipment in our system, or if this is a purchase, just delete the purchase out of the system, just to get rid of it completely. Okay. And so you can kind of scroll through that list, and hopefully I'm giving you enough information that you can you can determine just from the grid, is this a valid order or not? Because obviously we don't want to spend a lot of time doing ICD-10 conversion for orders that are complete nonsense. Now, I understand looking at it here in the list may not be the best way to to go about it. So what you can do is you can right-click just like you always can in the SQL editor, export that to the clipboard or to the file. If you choose a file, the default is comma separated value format, which is basically spreadsheet format. And so you can export that to a spreadsheet, pull it up in Excel or OpenOffice or any other spreadsheet you like, and then you can sort the data any way that you like, etc., and take a look at it. But the step 2 is delete any unneeded orders, because there's no point in working with stuff that is worthless. All right, the third step, go back here, is to add ICD-9 codes for add ICD-10 codes for each ICD-9 code, which has a one-to-one general equivalent match. Now, basically what this means is just like we looked at it here, 496 has one ICD-10 code. There is a one-to-one match. Okay. Well, there's really no reason for us to spend employee time adding those ICD-10 codes if there is only a one-to-one match. Okay, we can do that automatically and programmatically, and that's what we've done. Okay, and the way to do that is this. Okay, and this will explain to you kind of what we're doing here, but we're using the code set that's available through CMS, which is the general equivalent matching, right here. And basically that's provided for us by CMS to basically say this ICD-9 code equals this ICD-10 code. And so that's what we have done. The way to do that is under System and Technical Support. So let's go to System and Technical Support, and you'll see Add ICD-10 One-to-One Gem. Okay, I click on that, and it gives me an information screen here, basically just are you sure you want to do this? Okay, because this will add an ICD-10 code in the Customer Edit Diagnosis tab for each ICD-9 code. It will add an ICD-10 gem code in the Recurring Item Diagnosis Edit for each ICD-9 code. And that says checked, but well, it is only the codes that are checked are only going to be the codes that are added. Okay, so I guess that is valid. So do you want to continue? Yes or no? Okay, and I want to say yes. Okay, now it says, hey, ICD-10 diagnosis codes matching your gem one-to-one were added. Now, what does it mean one-to-one? What that means is some ICD-9 codes have 2 or 3 or 4 ICD-10 codes that it could possibly be. And if that's the case, we can't do that conversion for you automatically, because for your one ICD-9 code, which ICD-10 code should we pick? There are 2 or more that we could pick. So we can't do that. We have to leave that to you. Okay? But the great thing is what we have found is that on average, looking at all of our customers, 95% of the, well, let me rephrase that. About 80% of the codes that are in the ICD list have a one-to-one match. Well, that's not real great. Okay, if you're going to have to do let's see, is it 80% or is it may even be less than that? I don't think so, because there are not that many gem codes. I think it's a very small. I think it's like 15 or 20%. It's very small. But what we found is the codes that we use on a regular basis are the codes that generally have a general equivalent match. In other words, what we found is that 90% or more of the codes that you typically use have a one-to-one match. And so what we are able to do is basically, using that gem code, we're getting 90, to up to 95% of the work that you would have to do done. And so that's fantastic. Okay, and that's what that that's what that little tool does. Now you can run that tool as often as you like. okay? Because if it sees a customer or if it sees an order that an ICD-10 has already been added for, it won't add it again, okay? And so there's no harm if you want to go in and I click the SQL editor, sorry, System Technical Support and add ICD-10. If you want to run that 2 or 3 times, or if you want to run it once a week, or if you want to run, it's entirely up to you. It won't hurt anything to run it a second and a third and a fourth time. So if you want to do some work and maybe some you're still getting some orders in that have ICD-9 codes, there's no harm in running it multiple times. But I would hope that at some point you would put into place a process to basically say, hey, we're not going to put in any new orders unless we have both the ICD-9 and the ICD-10 codes available. Okay, now so that's what it does. All right, so now let's go take a look at for example, our recurring orders. And see what happened. Okay, this order had a 428.0, and so what the system did is it added to that I-50.9 that we saw that was a general equivalent match. Okay, and you'll notice that it's just order number 1 and 2. Again, the effective dates are through of 9/30 and starting of 10/1, and so right now the ICD-10 code will not go, and beginning October 1st, the ICD-10 code will go alone. So that's exactly what we wanted to do. Okay, and so that happened for us automatically if we go and look at the patient, okay, and diagnosis codes. Now you noticed previously that we had I think there were about 6 codes in there. No, there were 5 codes. Well, now we've got well, actually got 2. We had 2 ones, and so now we've got 4 ones. But basically, for every code, we now have an ICD-10 match if there was one available. For example, here is a 9, and that matched to a 10. Here's the 9, and there's the 10. Again, here's the 9, and there's the 10. You can see it's using the same list order that you had, and so I know that these 2 codes matched. For example, and we looked that up too. The 496 here matched to the J44.9. So there we're matching. Again, here it looks like in this patient chart, every code I had a 1-to-1 match. And again, that's because the most popular codes do have a 1-to-1 match. And so, that's what you're seeing there. So those are the 2 areas that the program works in. It works in recurring orders, and it works in your customer's chart. Okay, it does not go into claims. It does not go into medical orders. Okay, so if you need an ICD-10 code in either of those places, you'll have to do it yourself. Only recurring orders and the customer's chart are the 2 places that it happens. Now, I do want to talk about one thing, because I did have a customer call up and we discussed this. It's been a couple of 3 weeks ago, I guess, but she was saying that basically her understanding was that we could put in no diagnosis codes, no ICD-10 diagnosis codes, that we had to get all of our codes from the doctor. Okay, and that's something that that you'll have to to consider for yourself. Every expert that I have talked to, the webinars that I have attended, have all said that if there's a 1-to-1 match, that there's nothing wrong with us, with us making that conversion from the ICD-9 to the ICD-10 code, which is what we're doing for you automatically. But if you're concerned about that, then you will need to check with your authorities to see if that is in fact what you want to do, because if that's the case, then there is nothing that I can do for you automatically other than to show you the orders and to help you send those letters out to the doctor, which we're going to cover here in just a minute. Okay, let me stop for just a minute. I'm trying to roll on very quickly. I know this is going long. Okay, Jennifer's asking for CMNs that have already been received for a recurring rental product, say hospital bed. Do we have to get a new CMN starting 10/1 with the ICD-10 code, or will the original CMN work? Jennifer, my understanding again from listening to experts and watching a number of webinars is no, we don't need a new CMN in that case. Okay, we'll simply convert the ICD-9 code to an ICD-10 code that is appropriate when we're billing the system. Now, if you don't know what the ICD-10 code should be and you have to go back to the doctor, I would say that's probably an occasion where you probably do want it to get the CMN again, because he's going to be, in essence, doing the same thing probably that he did previously to authorize that CMN. All right. Okay, Janet's asking, will the ICD-10 be selected and recurs when it's added, or will it just add and make us select? And again, Janet, just like you saw here in the order, when we do the one-to-one conversion, we are, oops, look at that, I just unselected it. We are automatically selecting it with the order. Okay, so what you'll see is it will not only add it to the list, but it will select it. Now, if there are codes in the in the list that are not selected, it will not particularly add new codes to that list. But these codes are coming from the patient's chart, and so when we added new diagnosis codes to the patient chart, they're now showing up here as well. So you will see potentially some ICD-10 codes there as well. But we're only selecting the codes that you selected. So if you had, for example, a 428 selected, then we are going to select the corresponding J44.9 with the system. So our hope is that basically you won't have to do anything with this order now, since there was a one-to-one relationship. Okay. All right, Sabrina's saying, why not do step 3 first and then run the report in number 1? And that way it would be so much lower. But then, Sabrina, you wouldn't understand what a fantastic work that we had done for you. You would just click the button and say, I've got so many codes. By doing the step 1, you can say, oh my goodness, I've got this many orders to do. And then when you click the button and do the gem, you can run it again, because that's the next step. You can say, hey, look what Team DME did for me. And that is the next step, in fact. What we're going to do is go back to our, and run the summary by ICD count again. Okay, and I only have one 428 dot, which, that really needs a .0 on it anyway. I only have one order that I need to worry about. Okay, so to answer your question, yes, you could jump down all the way to step 3, but I really like you to look at, all that we're doing for you, and that's the reason we do that. All right, let me try to answer some other, excuse me. Okay, Sarah's asking a great question here. When discussing the one-to-one match on the coding, isn't the whole point of ICD-10 to eliminate the use of unspecified in coding? And then, she gives us an example, but we had an example already in the oxygen concentrator. Well, this is hospital bed, but it's the same thing. This is congestive heart failure unspecified. That's what the doctor gave us. Okay? Here, we're converting it to the equivalent ICD-10 code, I-50.9, which is heart failure unspecified. Her question is, would it not be better for us to use a code that's not unspecified? For example, if you look at I-50.9, okay, there's heart failure unspecified. But you have all of these other codes. In fact, the I-50 is heart failure. And so, specifically, is it the left ventricle failure, an I-50.1, or is it a systolic congestive heart failure, I-50.2? And to answer your question, yes, it would be better, and that's what ICD-10 is designed for, is for us to get as specific a diagnosis as we possibly can. But the trick is, we can't do that. The doctor has to do that. And so if the doctor has given us an unspecified code, there's no way, unless he's given you some additional information in the chart notes, there's no way for us to determine specifically what the heart failure is. And in fact, the doctor may even not know it himself. Okay? So, when we say there's a one-to-one conversion, we're basically going from if the code we started with was unspecified, clearly we're in the ICD-10 going to go to an unspecified code as well. Yes, we could get a more specific code if it was available. And maybe moving forward, that's what we'll get. But, with the information that we currently have, this is the best that we can do. Okay? All right. All right, Kevin's asking, can we show one that does not have a one-to-one match? All right, and I do have that. If you will, I'm doing this from memory, so yeah, I was afraid of that. Hold on just a second. I think 787. Okay, 787.0. Let me try that one. Okay. I thought I had a good example of that one, but I don't, Kevin, just right offhand. We'll try to get to that in a few minutes. Maybe if Mike could look one up for me. Okay, Nicole's asking, when we run the SQL editor for the GEM one-to-one matching, okay, how will we know which of our ICD-9 codes did not have a one-to-one match? And the answer to that question is they'll show up on your list, okay? When we have the, whoops, wrong button. When we have the SQL editor, okay, and we run that, and you'll remember we had about 6 codes and I think 14 428.0s, and we had, this code. This is the only code we need to worry about now. Okay, this is the only code which no longer has a ICD-10 one-to-one match. Okay. All right. Janet's saying try 799.2. Let's try that real quick. O2, I'm sorry. Nope, that has a one-to-one match. Okay. People are trying to help me here. I appreciate that. 709.2. I don't get it here. We're just going to move on. Ugh. All right, one more chance. 493.90. Yay, okay. So if your diagnosis code is 493.90, there are 4 different ICD-9 codes from J45.909. Well, I'm sorry, there are 2 different codes. It appears that it's duplicated these 2 as well. I'm not sure why it's doing that. But anyway, you know, the system can't know which of those 2 codes to choose, and so it just can't do it. And so that's going to be an example of an ICD-9 code, which we can't do automatically. Okay? Now, what do you do in that case? Well, then you go to step 4. Okay? Let's go back to our list here. Step 4 is to convert all the ICD-9 codes for which you can identify an ICD-10 code based on the patient's chart. In other words, manually. Okay? We've done what we can do automatically, and now we need to go manually. If you have the chart notes to support a change in the diagnosis code from the ICD-9 to the ICD-10, there's nothing wrong with you doing that. Okay? Again, if you have the documentation in the chart notes to support it. In other words, a lot of times the doctor will not give you a code, but he'll give you a description of the diagnosis code, and you have chosen the ICD-9 code. Well, in the same way, you could choose the ICD-10 code, okay, if it's in the chart notes to support that, okay? But if it's not in the chart notes to support that, then you have no choice but to go back to the doctor. Okay, and the way to do that is to okay, that's step 4. In step 4, basically you run the detail by order line item, which we've already done, and you basically can walk through that list, although that list will be much smaller now, and you can, you know, see if you have chart notes to support it. And that's step 4. Step 5 is, okay, you know, I give up. I can't do this. I have to get it from the doctor. And so step 5 is to print form letters for all the remaining recurring orders, you know, to the doctor and let him do it. Okay? And to do that, first of all, we want a summary by physician customer. Okay? And so that's here, summary by physician customer. You'll notice this is quite a bit longer in the SQL. Okay? And so we go into the SQL editor, cut and paste, F9, and somebody asked me where we're getting, how we were getting there. You go to System and SQL editor. Okay. You may not have it in the version you have currently. We just added that about I think about 6 months ago. So depending on how up to date you are, you may not see it right there. You know, in the list. But this is the only example of an order that I need to do some work with. And, you know, this is to Johnny Cash. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to order number 10224. Oops. Just minimize. Okay, here's my recurring orders. Nope, that's medical orders. Let's go to recurring orders. 10244. I'm going to unfilter that. 224, I'm sorry. Okay, so there's Johnny Cash. I'm going to edit that. Okay, and here's another something that we have added for you to make this process easier. Okay, I can Control P to print, F for form letter, and we've added a new form letter called Physician ICD-10 Request Letter. Okay, and basically what that does is that takes this order, and specifically this line item, and it creates a form letter to your doctor, okay, like so. Okay, and you know, again, this is an RTF, so if you don't like the format of the letter or you don't like the wording that we have chosen, you are welcome to change it and make it your own. But this is the example, the sample that we've provided for you. We've designed it, you know, so that it will fit in a window envelope here if you want to. this is the fold mark right here, and so fold it right there, and it will go in a standard number 10 window envelope, or customers, as they've been using it, have requested the fax number, so we put the fax number right there on the form, or some customers are e-faxing it directly out of the system. However you would like to do it, you can, but basically it says, Dear Mark Long, that's my doctor. As you're aware, CMS is requiring all claims with a date of service on or after October 1st to include the ICD-10 diagnosis code. Can you please provide that for the following patient? And then we've got the patient information down here. Okay, the patient's name, address, his date of birth. I don't have a date of birth in for Johnny Cash, so otherwise it would print right there. I do have the item and the HCPCS code, the ICD-9 code, and then a spot for the doctor put in the ICD-10 code. And so basically, I think that was 3 clicks, and you're ready to send that to the physician. Okay, and so you'll need to do that for all your remaining ICD-9 codes, which you can't figure out. Okay, so that's the 5 steps. I hope that has been pretty easy. All right, let's maybe take a look at some of our last questions here. Okay, what version of Team is this working with? And the other question is, will we be able to do these kind of updates without this version? Amber, the ability to, you really need this version, okay? You can start the process like steps 1 and 2 without this version, but steps 3 through 5, you're really going to need this version to work with, okay? And that is about 2015 2.01, okay? Now, if you are one of our cloud customers, you currently have this version, so you're ready to start today, okay? Now, we want to, not overwhelm ourselves with, A, people wanting the update, and then B, trying to do all their ICD-10 stuff at the same time, and so we're going to, to wait about 10 days before making this available to everybody. But about the 14th, we're going to make this version available to even our on-site customers as well. So, if you're our cloud customer, you can start the process today, and we'd encourage you to do that. If you are an on-site customer, then go ahead and get started with steps 1 and 2, and then plan on doing step 3 through 5 beginning on or about the 14th. And we'll send an email out about that. For everybody. But hopefully that answers everybody's question. Okay, Janet's asking, are you going to do a test claim through Team for electronic billing? Janet, we have been working with Medicare for over a year, actually prior to the original deadline of October 1st of 2014. So we have done the initial ICD-10 testing. We have done the end-to-end testing in January, and we passed 100%. We did the end-to-end testing with them in March, passed 100%. So we've done all of their testing with Medicare and have gone through with flying colors. But so as far as I'm aware, we are not going to be doing any more testing for ICD-10. It's ready to go. And we have a number of customers who are already on it. We've already asked some people to do this ICD-10 conversion, and have gone through without a hitch. And so I'm expecting that it's ready for everybody to go. All right. All right. Marilyn's asking, please, how to print the physician letter again. Again, and you can do this not only in recurring orders, but in medical orders, claims. You can do it really anywhere you have an order. But down here under the printer icon, okay, you can press Control P, or you can click on the printer icon, okay, and then you can press F for form letter. Okay, let me do Control P because it will show you the shortcuts. If I do that, you'll see that the F is underlined in form letters. So if you press F, then it will go to the form letter. Okay, and so press F, and then it will pull up the mail merge form, and generally it's going to be positioned in the area that you're in. In other words, we're in orders, and so it's coming up under Team DME forms and orders. Okay, and that's where you will find the physician ICD-10 request letter. Okay, and then you just click open, and there you go. Okay, now just one thing, don't I told you that you could change the RTF, and you can, but you don't want to change it here and save it to the same name, otherwise there's no more mail merging. It's already been done. So you want to probably, if you want to save this, you want to pick a different name. But if you want to edit the order itself, you would open up Team DME to forms and user, forms and, I'm sorry, not user, order. And then there's the ICD-10 request letter. So when you open that up, and here's what it looks like. It's got all the programming in it, but here is the the actual text that you might possibly want to change. Don't change the programming unless you know what you're doing, but you are welcome to change whatever text there is that you would like. But basically, whatever you have there is what's going to be merged into the letter. Now, again, this is only looking at one line item. So if you have multiple line items for this particular order, you may want to print that letter out a couple of times, or you may want to edit the letter manually yourself. The mail merge, the form letter, can't deal with multiple line items, and so okay, all right. Well, I know that this has gone long, and I didn't intend for it to, but it seemed like we were having some really good questions, and this is a really important subject, so I appreciate it. I think we've pretty much answered everybody's question. Mike, is that the case, or is there a question or two that we need to address?
No, I think you're good.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody for joining us. We will make the webinar available just as all of our webinars are in the archive. And it will probably take us a day to get it up there, but if you want to watch the webinar again, you're welcome to do that. And beyond that, I appreciate you for attending, and have a great day and a great 4th of July weekend. Thank you.